The crystal towers of Nexus Prime stretched into the purple sky like frozen lightning. Inside the largest tower, alien beings from 12 different worlds sat in their usual places around a massive circular table. They had been meeting here for over 3,000 years, and today felt exactly like any other day. Ambassador Kethville adjusted his silver robes and cleared his throat. The tall, blue-skinned Selenite had given this same speech about trade agreements at least 100 times before. Around the table, other ambassadors checked their data pads or stared out the windows at the peaceful city below. Council Speaker Vorthak, made entirely of living crystal, sat at the head of the table. His body caught the light from the room's glowing walls and threw rainbow patterns across the ceiling. He had been the council speaker for 800 years. And in all that time, nothing surprising had ever happened during these meetings. The galaxy was perfect. 12 species, each with their own planets and trade routes. Everyone knew their place. Wars were a thing of the ancient past. The Council made sure that any new species they found was slowly and carefully brought into their civilized society. There had not been a real crisis in over 2,000 years. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty and watched the stars through the main screen. His ship had been traveling through deep space for 3 years now, carrying 200 colonists to what Earth hoped would become humanity's first settlement beyond the solar system. So far they had found nothing but empty planets and silent space. Jake was 35 years old, with short brown hair and tired eyes. He had volunteered for this mission because he believed humans would find other intelligent life among the stars. Now, after 3 years of searching, he was starting to wonder if Earth was truly alone in the universe. "Captain," called Chief Science Officer Lisa Chun from her station. Lisa was a small woman with black hair tied back in a simple ponytail. She had been running scans of nearby star systems for months, always hoping to find something interesting. "I'm getting the same readings as yesterday. No signs of technology or radio signals anywhere in this sector." Jake nodded and walked over to her station. The computer screens showed star maps covered in red dots, each one representing a system they had already checked. Green dots showed systems that might have planets suitable for life, but they had found none with any signs of civilization. "Keep scanning," Jake told her. "We still have 6 more systems to check before we reach our destination." Back on Earth, Admiral Rick Hayes sat in a meeting room deep inside the Pentagon. The 50-year-old military officer had gray hair and a serious face that rarely smiled. On the walls around him, large screens showed the positions of all human ships scattered across nearby space. 5 colony ships, dozens of exploration vessels, and a growing number of deep space monitoring stations. All of them reported the same thing: no alien contact. "The politicians are asking questions again," said Colonel Steve Rogers, a younger officer with blonde hair and a muscular build. "They want to know why we're spending so much money looking for aliens that might not exist." "Admiral," Hayes rubbed his forehead, "tell them what we always tell them. If there are other intelligent species out there, we need to find them before they find us. It's better to meet our neighbors on our own terms." Across the country, in a small laboratory in California, Dr. Amy Parker sat surrounded by dozens of computer screens. The 30-year-old scientist had dedicated her life to searching for signs of alien life. Her computers were connected to radio telescopes around the world, constantly listening to space for any signals that might come from other civilizations. Amy had brown hair that she often forgot to brush and wore thick glasses that made her eyes look larger than they were. She lived on coffee and determination, working 8-hour days in her cluttered lab. Most people thought she was wasting her time, but Amy knew in her heart that humanity was not alone. On this particular morning, as she sipped her 3rd cup of coffee and checked the overnight data, one of her computers began flashing with alerts. Amy nearly dropped her coffee cup as she stared at the screen. After years of nothing but cosmic background noise, her equipment had detected something impossible. The signal was coming from a region of space no human had ever explored. It was not random noise from a star or planet. The pattern was too organized, too deliberate. It showed mathematical sequences that could only come from intelligent minds. Not just one mind, but many different ones, each using slightly different mathematical languages. Amy's hands shook as she began recording everything. The signal was strong, much stronger than anything Earth could produce. According to her calculations, it was coming from at least 12 different sources, all broadcasting on the same frequencies. Whatever was out there, it was not just one civilization. It was many civilizations working together. 3 days later, the news reached every human ship in space. Dr. Amy Parker had found proof that intelligent alien life existed, and it was organized on a scale that humanity had never imagined. The galaxy was not empty. It was full of civilizations that had been talking to each other for who knew how long. Captain Jake Morrison called his senior officers to the Liberties Conference room. The small space felt cramped with 8 people crowded around a metal table. Lisa Chun connected her datapad to the room's main screen and showed them the signals that Dr. Parker had detected. "This changes everything," Jake said quietly. "We're not exploring empty space anymore. We're entering someone else's neighborhood." Lieutenant Ben Murphy, the ship's tactical officer, studied the data with a worried expression. Ben was a young man with red hair who had joined the military because he loved space combat simulations. Now, faced with real aliens, he was not sure. Those games had prepared him for anything. "Captain," Ben said, "these signals are incredibly sophisticated. If they can broadcast across such long distances, their technology must be far ahead of ours." Lisa Shun nodded in agreement. "The mathematical complexity alone suggests they've been developing science for much longer than humans have. We might be dealing with civilizations that are thousands of years more advanced than us." On Earth, emergency meetings were happening in every major government building. Admiral Hayes found himself in the White House Situation Room, briefing the president and other top officials about humanity's first contact with alien intelligence. The signals continued to pour in from Dr. Parker's equipment, showing a galaxy full of active civilizations. "What do we know about their intentions?" asked the president, a gray-haired woman who had spent her career dealing with international politics. "Not interstellar ones, nothing yet," Admiral Hayes admitted. "The signals appear to be general communications between their civilizations. Dr. Parker's team is working around the clock to decode them, but it's like trying to understand a conversation in 12 different languages we've never heard before." Colonel Rogers leaned forward in his chair. "Sir, I recommend we prepare our military assets for any possibility. If these aliens have been communicating for thousands of years, they probably have protocols for dealing with new species like us." Meanwhile, Dr. Amy Parker had not slept for 3 days. Her laboratory had been invaded by teams of linguists, mathematicians, and computer specialists, all trying to decode the alien signals. The breakthrough came when one of her quantum computers finally identified a pattern in the mathematical sequences. "They're using prime numbers as a universal language base," Amy announced to her exhausted team. "Once we know that, we can start to understand the structure of their communications." As more of the alien language became clear, a disturbing picture began to emerge. The aliens were not just talking to each other. They were talking about procedures, protocols, and something called proper introduction methods for developing species. Most concerning of all, they kept referring to enforcement actions and relocation procedures for species that did not follow their rules. Amy stared at her computer screen as the truth became clear. Humanity had not discovered a galaxy full of friendly neighbors waiting to welcome them. They had discovered a galaxy full of civilizations that expected all newcomers to follow their rules and accept their authority. The question was, what would humanity do about it? Ambassador Kethville was explaining the mineral rights treaty between the Selenite Empire and the Crystal Hegemony when every communication device in the Galactic Council chambers began screaming with emergency alerts. The blue-skinned ambassador stopped mid-sentence as red warning lights flashed across the crystal walls of the meeting room. Council. Speaker Vorthak rose from his chair, his crystalline body reflecting the warning lights like a prism. In 3,000 years of galactic civilization, nothing had ever interrupted a council session. The emergency communication system was designed to activate only in cases of galaxy-threatening disasters or the discovery of dangerous new technologies. What is the nature of this emergency? Vorthak asked, his voice sounding like wind chimes in a storm. The main communication screen flickered to life, showing a simple message broadcast on frequencies that had not been used by civilized species in millennia. The message was crude, unencrypted, and transmitted with enough power to reach every corner of the galaxy. "This is the United Earth Space Command," the message read in basic mathematical language. "We are the human species from the planet Earth. In the Sol system, we seek peaceful contact with any intelligent civilizations. Please respond on any frequency. We repeat, this is Earth calling. Please answer." The council chamber fell completely silent. Ambassador Kethel felt his hands trembling as he read the message again. Around the table, representatives from 12 different civilizations stared at the screen in shock and growing horror. "Impossible," whispered Ambassador Tethran of the Talon Confederacy, her reptilian features showing deep concern. "No species announces itself like this. New races are discovered and properly introduced through official channels." Vorthak's crystal form began glowing brighter, a sign of extreme agitation. "This is a completely uncontrolled emergence. The unknown species has violated every protocol of galactic civilization. They are broadcasting randomly, revealing their location to everyone, and using primitive communication methods." Within minutes, the Council's emergency response systems activated. Alerts went out to enforcement fleets stationed throughout the galaxy. Deep space monitoring stations began tracking the origin point of the human broadcasts. Most importantly, the Council initiated Protocol 7, Containment, Procedures for Uncontrolled Species Emergence. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, watching his communication officer's hands shake as alien responses flooded their systems. Lieutenant Sarah Kim, a young woman with short black hair, had been trained to handle first contact scenarios, but nothing had prepared her for this. "Captain," Sarah said, her voice tight with excitement and fear, "we're receiving responses from multiple sources. The computer is detecting at least 12 different alien languages. Our translation systems are working overtime to decode them." Jake felt his heart racing as the first translations appeared on his screen. The responses were not the friendly greetings he had hoped for. Instead, they carried a tone of authority and barely contained irritation. "Attention, unknown species. Read one message from something called the Galactic Council. You have violated multiple communication protocols. Cease all unauthorized broadcasts immediately and prepare for proper introduction procedures. Failure to comply will result in enforcement action." Another message was even more direct. "Primitive species of Sol system. Your random broadcasting endangers galactic security. Power down all communication equipment and await arrival of guidance fleet. Resistance will be met with relocation to appropriate developmental zone." Lisa Chun worked frantically at her science station, trying to decode more of the alien responses. "Captain," she called out, "I'm detecting dozens of different sources. This isn't just one alien civilization. We've stumbled into some kind of galactic community, and we've apparently broken their rules just by saying hello." On Earth, Admiral Rick Hayes found himself at the center of humanity's first diplomatic crisis before they had even met their neighbors. Face to face, the Pentagon Situation Room buzzed with activity as analysts tried to understand the flood of alien responses pouring in from across the galaxy. "Sir," Colonel Rogers reported, "the aliens are responding, but not in the way we expected. They're treating us like children who need to be punished for speaking out of turn." Dr. Amy Parker had been awake for 5 straight days, her laboratory, now crowded with military personnel and government officials. Her computers worked around the clock to decode the alien messages, revealing a picture of galactic society that made her increasingly uncomfortable. "They have procedures for everything," Amy explained to Admiral Hayes over a secure video link. From what I can understand, new species are supposed to be discovered by their exploration fleets, then slowly introduced to galactic society over hundreds of years. We broke their system by announcing ourselves, the alien messages spoke of. Councils and protocols of proper procedures for primitive species integration, and most troubling of all, repeated references to enforcement actions and developmental zones for races that refuse to follow galactic standard procedures. What exactly is a developmental zone? Admiral Hayes asked. Amy's face was pale with exhaustion and worry. From the context, it appears to be a place where younger species are relocated to develop proper civilization under alien supervision. They're talking about moving us away from Earth. Meanwhile, in the crystal towers of Nexus Prime, War Commander Zephyr of the Talon Confederacy received his orders. The reptilian military officer had handled 47 similar situations during his long career. Young species that discovered faster-than-light travel inevitably made the same mistakes. They broadcast randomly, ignored proper protocols, and needed to be guided to appropriate worlds where they could develop under proper supervision. Standard enforcement operation, Zephyr hissed to his fleet commanders through the military communication network. Assemble 60 vessels and proceed to the Sol system. Disable their primitive technology. Relocate the population to Kepler 186 developmental zone and quarantine their homeworld until they demonstrate proper galactic citizenship. The Talon Confederacy had built their reputation as the galaxy's peacekeepers through exactly these kinds of operations. They moved with the calm efficiency of gardeners pruning an overgrown hedge. In 3,000 years of galactic peace, no primitive species had ever offered serious resistance to relocation procedures. Captain Jake Morrison called an emergency meeting of all senior officers aboard the Liberty. The ship's small conference room felt cramped as 8 people crowded around the metal table, studying the latest alien communications. "They're giving us an ultimatum," Jake explained. "Stop all broadcasts, power down our ships, and wait for their guidance fleet to arrive. If we don't comply, they'll relocate us to what they call a developmental zone." Lieutenant Ben Murphy, the tactical officer, studied the alien fleet movements that their long-range sensors had detected. "Captain, I'm tracking multiple groups of alien ships heading toward human space. Based on their approach vectors, they'll reach our outer colonies in less than 2 weeks." Lisa Chun had been analyzing the alien technology signatures. "Their ships are definitely more advanced than ours," she reported. "But there's something odd about their approach patterns. They're not moving like they expect any resistance. This looks more like a police action than a military operation." Back on Earth, emergency sessions were taking place in government buildings around the world. The United Nations Security Council met in continuous session as world leaders tried to decide how humanity should respond to what amounted to an eviction notice from their galactic neighbors. President Martinez stood before a joint session of Congress, her face grim as she explained the situation. "The alien coalition has made their intentions clear. They consider us a primitive species that needs to be relocated and supervised until we develop what they call proper civilization. They are not asking for our permission." Admiral Hayes coordinated with military leaders from every major nation as they prepared for the unthinkable. Earth's space-based defenses had been designed to protect against asteroids and possible threats from other human nations, not alien invasion fleets with technology centuries ahead of their own. "How long do we have?" asked General Liu, commander of the Asian Space Defense Force. 2 weeks until the first alien ships reach our outer colonies," Hayes replied. "Maybe 3 weeks before they arrive at Earth itself." Colonel Rogers reviewed humanity's military assets with growing concern. "Sir, we have 12 combat-capable ships, 43 exploration vessels that could be armed, and Earth's orbital defense platforms, against 60 alien warships with superior technology." Dr. Amy Parker continued monitoring alien communications from her laboratory, now heavily guarded by military personnel. The alien fleet was broadcasting on military frequencies that her equipment could barely detect, but what she heard chilled her to the bone. "They're not planning to negotiate," she reported to Admiral Hayes. The alien commander is treating this like a routine operation. They've done this before, many times. From their communications, I can tell they expect us to surrender without a fight. War Commander Zephyr stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the star charts as his fleet moved through hyperspace toward the Sol system. The reptilian officer had sharp yellow eyes and scales that changed color with his mood. Right now, they showed the calm green of complete confidence. 60 warships followed behind his command vessel, each one carrying enough firepower to level a planet's surface. The fleet moved in perfect formation through the void between stars, their crews relaxed and certain of their mission's outcome. This was, after all, a routine operation. Estimated arrival at target system? Zephyr asked his navigation officer. 18 hours, War Commander, came the reply. All ships report ready for standard relocation procedures. Zephyr nodded and pulled up the files on similar operations. In his 300-year military career, he had overseen 47 primitive species relocations. The procedure never varied: disable their crewed vessels, transport the population to designated developmental worlds, and place their homeworld under quarantine until they learned proper galactic behavior. The humans would be no different. According to his intelligence reports, they had perhaps 50 space-capable vessels, all using primitive chemical and nuclear propulsion. Their weapons were limited to crude missiles and energy beams that could barely scratch modern shield systems. The operation would take less than 6 hours from start to finish. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the Liberty's war room, studying tactical displays with his senior officers. The small chamber had been hastily converted from a storage bay, with military equipment bolted to every available surface. Red lights bathed everything in an ominous glow as the ship prepared for battle. Enemy fleet composition? Jake asked his tactical officer. Lieutenant Ben Murphy consulted his sensor readings. 60 contacts, Captain. Lead vessel is approximately 3 times our size. The smaller ships are still twice as large as our biggest warships. They're maintaining a standard approach formation. Lisa Chun looked up from her science station. Captain, their approach pattern is almost textbook perfect. Too perfect. They're not varying their speed, not changing formation, not even running active scans of our defenses. It's like they don't expect us to fight back. Jake felt a cold anger building in his chest. The aliens were treating humanity like a minor inconvenience, something to be swept aside with minimal effort. They had never asked what humans wanted. They had simply decided that Earth's population would be relocated, and they expected no resistance. Maybe it's time to show them they're wrong, Jake muttered. On Earth, Admiral Rick Hayes coordinated the planet's defenses from his command center deep beneath the Pentagon. Dozens of officers worked at computer stations around him, tracking the approaching alien fleet and preparing humanity's response. The mood in the room was tense but determined. Status report on our forces? Hayes asked. Colonel Rogers read from his data pad. 12 frontline combat ships, 43 exploration vessels that we've armed with whatever weapons we could mount, and Earth's orbital defense platforms. Total of 800 nuclear missiles, 600 plasma torpedoes, and 42 experimental quantum warheads. The numbers sounded impressive until Hayes considered what they were facing. Human technology was designed for fighting other humans, not alien civilizations with shields and weapons that operated on principles Earth scientists barely understood. What about our stealth assets? Hayes asked. The UES Phantom is in position. In the asteroid belt, Rogers replied. Lieutenant Colonel Kate Williams reports her ship is completely undetected. The alien fleet seems to have no idea she's there. Hayes nodded grimly. The Phantom represented humanity's newest military technology, a ship designed around the principle that what the enemy couldn't see, they couldn't fight. If the coming battle went badly, Kate Williams and her crew might be humanity's last hope. Doctor Amy Parker worked feverishly in her laboratory, now converted into a military intelligence center. Banks of computers processed alien communications as the enemy fleet approached, revealing details about their technology and tactics. Admiral, Amy reported over the secure communication link. "I've broken more of their military codes. The alien commander is treating this like a training exercise. He's ordered his fleet to use minimum necessary force and to avoid damaging primitive vessels unnecessarily." Hayes felt his jaw clench. "They think we're going to surrender." "There's more," Amy continued. "They've already designated collection points for our population and selected worlds where we'll be relocated for proper development. They're planning to move us to a system called Kepler 186, over 500 light-years from Earth." The alien fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system with characteristic precision. 60 warships appeared in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with energy shields and advanced armor. They moved toward Earth like a slow-moving storm, confident and unstoppable. War Commander Zephyr studied the tactical display showing human positions throughout the solar system. As expected, the primitive vessels had scattered to defensive positions around their homeworld and colonies. Several human ships had taken shelter near asteroid fields, probably hoping to use the rocks for cover. "Pathetic," Zephyr hissed to his bridge crew. "They still think in terms of planetary warfare. Signal the fleet to begin standard intimidation procedures." The alien flagship fired a single energy beam at a human cargo freighter near Mars. The beam struck the ship's hull with surgical precision, disabling its engines without causing an explosion. The freighter drifted helplessly in space, its crew alive but powerless. "Attention primitive species," Zephyr broadcast on all human frequencies. "You have witnessed our superior firepower. Surrender your vessels immediately and prepare for relocation to appropriate developmental facilities. Resistance will only result in unnecessary casualties." Captain Jake Morrison watched the alien demonstration of power and felt something snap inside his chest. The aliens had just attacked a defenseless cargo ship to make a point. They were treating human lives like pieces on a game board to be moved around at their convenience. "All ships," Jake broadcast to the human fleet, "this is Captain Morrison. They want to relocate us like animals to a zoo. They want to take us away from Earth, away from our homes, away from everything we've built. I don't know about you, but I'd rather die fighting than live in their cage." The response from the human fleet was immediate and unanimous. Ship after ship responded with the same message: "Ready to fight, Captain." Lieutenant Colonel Kate Williams crouched in the cramped bridge of the UES Phantom, watching the alien fleet. Through her ship's advanced sensors, the stealth vessel was completely invisible to alien detection systems. Hidden among the asteroids like a predator waiting to strike, Kate was a small, fierce woman with short blonde hair and ice-blue eyes. That had earned her the nickname Frost among her crew. She had spent her entire military career preparing for space combat, and now she faced an enemy that had never fought anyone willing to shoot back. "Target the lead ship's engine section," she ordered her weapons officer. "We're going to give them a surprise they'll never forget." War Commander Zephyr expected the human vessels to power down their weapons and request surrender terms. Instead, he watched in growing alarm as the scattered human ships suddenly accelerated toward his fleet from multiple directions. Their formation looked chaotic, but as the distance closed, he realized they had surrounded his carefully organized battle line. "Impossible," he hissed. "Primitive species don't use pack tactics." The human ships moved like wolves attacking a herd, darting in from unexpected angles and using the debris of their own solar system as cover. They fired nuclear missiles in coordinated salvos, overwhelming the aliens' point defense systems through sheer numbers rather than technological superiority. Captain Jake Morrison made a decision that would echo through galactic history. Instead of trying to match the alien flagship's superior firepower, he ordered the Liberty to ram the command vessel at full speed. The aliens had shields designed to deflect energy weapons, not kinetic impacts from ships, whose crews were willing to die rather than submit. The Liberty struck the alien flagship like a meteor, her reinforced hull punching through the enemy's shields and tearing into their engine section. The impact killed Jake Morrison and most of his crew, but it also crippled the most powerful ship in the alien fleet. Admiral Hayes watched from Earth as humanity's outgunned fleet began employing tactics that no civilized galactic species had used in thousands of years. Human ships used asteroids as weapons, launched kamikaze attacks against superior vessels, and when their ships were crippled beyond repair, they self-destructed rather than surrender. Most shocking of all to the alien commanders, human vessels that were disabled didn't broadcast surrender signals. Instead, they continued fighting with whatever weapons still functioned, or tried to ram nearby alien ships as their final act of defiance. Dr. Amy Parker monitored alien communications as the battle raged, and what she heard changed her understanding of the galaxy forever. The alien fleet was in complete chaos, their commanders screaming for reinforcements and reporting to their superiors that they had encountered something unprecedented. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened within hours of receiving War Commander Zephyr S. retreat message. For the first time in 3,000 years, the crystal halls of Nexus Prime buzzed with genuine crisis energy. Ambassadors, who had spent centuries in comfortable routine, now faced something they had never encountered. A species that fought back. Council Speaker Vorthak stood at the center of the chamber, his crystalline form flickering with nervous energy as he read the battle reports. Around the circular table, representatives from 12 civilizations stared at data screens that showed the impossible. A primitive species had defeated a full enforcement fleet using tactics that seemed to come from the galaxy's violent prehistoric era. Ambassador Kethful spoke first, his blue skin pale with shock. The humans destroyed 23 of our ships and damaged 31 others. They used their own vessels as weapons, deliberately sacrificing themselves to damage our forces. This behavior is completely outside all known parameters for developing species. Ambassador Tethran of the Talon Confederacy hissed with anger and embarrassment. Her people had built their reputation as the galaxy's peacekeepers through centuries of successful enforcement operations. Now that reputation lay in ruins around the wreckage of Zephyr's fleet. They fought like savages, Tethran spat. Ramming attacks, suicide runs, using nuclear weapons in close combat. No civilized species has employed such tactics in over 2 millennia. But the most disturbing part of the battle reports was not the humans' tactical choices. It was their apparent enjoyment of the fight. Intercepted human communications showed crews cheering as they destroyed alien ships, captains volunteering for suicide missions, and soldiers who seemed genuinely excited about the prospect of combat. Dr. Amy Parker stood before the emergency joint session of Earth's government leaders, her laboratory data finally telling the complete story of what humanity had stumbled into. She looked exhausted but oddly relieved as she explained what her computers had decoded from the alien communications. The Galactic Council has ruled this part of space for 3,000 years, Amy reported. In all that time, they have never encountered serious military resistance. Their enforcement procedures were designed to handle species that would submit to authority, not ones that would fight to the death rather than be relocated. President Martinez leaned forward in her chair. What does this mean for Earth? It means we've changed everything, Amy replied. For the first time in galactic history, a species has successfully resisted Council authority. We've proven that their system isn't invincible. Admiral Hayes reviewed the battle damage reports with a mixture of pride and sorrow. Humanity had won, but the cost had been terrible. 12 ships destroyed, over 300 brave men and women dead, including Captain Jake Morrison, who had become humanity's first war hero in galactic history, but the victory had accomplished something beyond military success: the human fleets. Actions had sent a message across the galaxy that would echo for generations. Earth would not be moved, relocated, or controlled by anyone. Colonel Rogers entered the Situation Room with a communication pad in his hands. Sir, we're receiving a new transmission from the Galactic Council. This one is different from their previous messages. The transmission appeared on the main screen, and for the first time, the alien communication carried a tone of respect rather than condescension. Council Speaker Vorthak appeared via hologram, his crystal form somehow managing to convey humility despite his alien nature. To the leadership of the human species, the message began, the Galactic Council acknowledges that our initial approach was inappropriate. We had assumed you were a typical developing species requiring guidance and protection. Your recent actions have demonstrated that this assumption was incorrect. Admiral Hayes felt a grim satisfaction as he listened to the alien leader's words. Respect, it seemed, was something that had to be earned in this galaxy, not requested, Lieutenant. Colonel Kate Williams guided her damaged stealth ship back toward Earth, her crew working frantically to repair systems that had been pushed far beyond their design limits. During the battle, the Phantom had become humanity's secret weapon, appearing from nowhere to strike alien ships and then vanishing back into the asteroid fields. Kate had personally destroyed 4 alien vessels and disabled 3 others, using tactics borrowed from submarine warfare that the aliens had never encountered before. Her success had proven that human ingenuity could overcome technological disadvantages through superior strategy and sheer determination. As her ship limped home, Kate monitored the alien fleet's retreat. The surviving vessels moved slowly, their crews clearly shaken by their encounter with humanity. For species that had known only peace for millennia, the human approach to warfare had been a brutal education. War Commander Zephyr sat in his flagship's medical bay, nursing wounds from the human ramming attack that had nearly destroyed his vessel. His scales had turned the dark gray of deep shame as he composed his final report to the Talon Confederacy High Command. The humans are not like any species we have encountered, he wrote. They do not seek to minimize casualties or preserve resources. They fight as if death in battle is preferable to submission. Our standard enforcement protocols are completely ineffective against such an enemy. The worst part, from Zephyr's perspective, was that the humans had seemed to enjoy the combat. Their communications during the battle had been filled with what could only be described as enthusiasm for the fight. They celebrated successful attacks, encouraged each other during desperate moments, and faced certain death with what appeared to be genuine excitement on Nexus Prime. The Council faced a crisis that threatened the foundation of their galactic order. For 3,000 years, their authority had been absolute because no species had ever successfully challenged it. Now, a single human victory had shattered that illusion of invincibility. Ambassador Kethville studied the tactical analyses of the human fighting techniques with growing concern. They used every available resource as a weapon, he reported. Asteroids, disabled ships, even nuclear reactors set to overload, they turned their entire solar system into a battlefield. Even more troubling were the reports of human innovation during combat. The primitive species had analyzed alien shield frequencies in real time, adapted their weapons mid-battle, and developed new tactics on the fly. They had treated the engagement not as a diplomatic crisis, but as a problem to be solved through applied violence. Council Speaker Vorthak called for a vote on humanity's status within galactic civilization. The choice was simple but unprecedented. Declare war on a species that had proven capable of inflicting serious casualties, or acknowledge them as equals and invite them to join the galactic community as independent members. The vote was unanimous. War against the humans would be too costly, both in ships and lives. For the first time in galactic history, a species would be admitted to the Council not through careful introduction and gradual development, but through force of arms and demonstrated strength. Dr. Amy Parker worked around the clock to establish proper diplomatic communications with the Galactic Council. The aliens were now eager to talk, but on very different terms than they had originally proposed. Instead of discussing relocation procedures, they were negotiating the terms of humanity's membership in galactic civilization. They want to send a diplomatic mission to Earth, Amy reported to Admiral Hayes. Full ambassadorial status with recognition of human sovereignty over the Sol system and all human colonies. Hayes smiled for the first time in weeks. I suppose they've decided we're civilized enough to govern ourselves? 3 months later, Captain Lisa Shun stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned UES Morrison, named in honor of the hero who had changed galactic history with a single, desperate ramming attack. Behind her ship, a full human battle fleet, prepared to escort Earth's first diplomatic mission to Nexus. Prime, the fleet was different from the desperate collection of armed exploration vessels that had fought the Battle of Sol. These were purpose-built warships, incorporating technology reverse-engineered from captured alien equipment and lessons learned in humanity's first galactic war. As they approached the crystal towers of Nexus Prime, Lisa thought about how much had changed in such a short time. Humanity had gone from an unknown species to a galactic power in less than a year, earning their place through blood and determination rather than permission and patience. The Galactic Council waited for them now, no longer as judges deciding humanity's fate, but as equals recognizing strength. The galaxy had learned that some species could not be relocated, controlled, or managed. Some species had to be met on their own terms. Ambassador Kethvil prepared to welcome Earth's diplomatic mission with all the ceremony due to a sovereign galactic power. The humans had arrived late to the galactic community. They had certainly been unwelcome at first, but they had proven themselves undeniably armed with something the galaxy had forgotten existed: the will to fight for their freedom. As the human fleet took positions around Nexus Prime, every species in the galaxy understood that the age of unchallenged council authority was over. Humanity had entered the galactic stage not as subjects seeking permission to exist. 6 months after the Battle of Sol, Captain Lisa Chun walked through the corridors of Nexus Prime's diplomatic quarter, still amazed that humans were allowed to be there at all. The crystal walls hummed with alien voices speaking in dozens of different languages, but now human voices were part of that mix. Earth had established its first permanent embassy on the galactic capital world. The embassy building was a strange sight among the flowing crystal architecture of the alien city. Human engineers had constructed it using Earth materials and designs, creating a structure that looked distinctly different from everything around it. The building's sharp angles and metal surfaces stood out like a declaration that humanity would not simply blend into galactic society, but would remain distinctly human. Ambassador Helen Parker, Dr. Amy Parker's older sister, had been chosen as Earth's first official representative to the Galactic Council. Helen was a career diplomat who had spent 20 years negotiating treaties between Earth's nations, but nothing had prepared her for the complexities of galactic politics. "The other species are still adjusting to our presence," Helen explained to Lisa during their weekly security briefing. "Some are fascinated by human military tactics and want to study our approach to warfare. Others are terrified and want to keep us as far away from their territory as possible." Lisa nodded as she reviewed the security reports. Her job was to protect Earth's diplomatic mission, but she was discovering that the greatest threats came not from direct attacks, but from the subtle political maneuvering that seemed to be the galactic norm. 3 days earlier, representatives from the crystalline hegemony had approached Helen with what they called a mutual defense proposal. The crystal beings wanted to form an alliance with humanity, offering advanced technology in exchange for human military protection. Similar offers had come from 4 other species, each one nervous about their neighbors and eager to have human warriors on their side. On Earth, Admiral Rick Hayes dealt with a different kind of problem. The victory at Sol had made humanity famous throughout the galaxy, but fame brought its own dangers. Alien refugees were arriving at Earth's borders daily, seeking protection from various galactic conflicts that humanity barely understood. "We've got 12 ships requesting asylum this week alone," Colonel Rogers reported during the morning briefing. 3 are from species fleeing civil wars, 2 are traders running from pirates, and the rest are individuals who apparently committed crimes on their homeworlds and think Earth won't extradite them. Hayes rubbed his temples as he studied the reports. Earth had gone from being completely unknown to being seen as a safe haven for anyone in the galaxy who needed protection. The problem was that humanity didn't have the resources or knowledge to properly handle galactic refugees. Dr. Amy Parker had been promoted to head Earth's new Xenological Research Institute, where she spent her days trying to understand the incredibly complex web of alliances, trade agreements, and ancient grudges that governed galactic politics. Her computers worked constantly to decode alien communications and identify potential threats to human interests. "The galaxy is not the peaceful place we originally thought," Amy reported to a closed session of the United Nations Security Council. There are at least 47 active conflicts happening right now, from trade wars to actual shooting wars between different species. The Galactic Council doesn't prevent conflicts, it just manages them. The most disturbing discovery was that the Council's enforcement fleets were not really peacekeepers at all. They were tools for maintaining the existing power structure, ensuring that older, more established species remained in control while younger races were kept in subordinate positions. "We accidentally broke their system," Amy explained, by refusing to be relocated and proving that enforcement fleets could be defeated. We've encouraged other species to question Council authority. There are independence movements starting on at least 6 worlds that were previously under Council supervision. Meanwhile, War Commander Zephyr found himself in an unexpected position. After his defeat at Sol, the Talon Confederacy had demoted him and assigned him to study human military tactics. What he discovered during his research changed his entire understanding of warfare and civilization. The humans have been fighting continuously for their entire recorded history, Zephyr reported to his superiors. Not just wars between nations, but internal conflicts, civil wars, and revolutions. They have developed military tactics through constant practice against opponents who know all their strategies. The reptilian commander had spent months analyzing human battle records, from ancient conflicts fought with primitive weapons to the sophisticated space battles of recent years. What impressed him most was not human technology, but human adaptability. They could change tactics in the middle of a battle, develop new strategies from failure, and turn any situation into an opportunity for attack. They do not fight to minimize casualties, Zephyr continued. They fight to win, regardless of cost. This makes them extremely dangerous opponents, but also valuable allies for any species willing to earn their respect. Lieutenant Colonel Kate Williams commanded humanity's first deep space patrol fleet, 6 stealth ships that roamed the galaxy's trade routes looking for pirates and other threats. Her mission was officially described as protecting human interests, but in practice, she had become the galaxy's most effective anti-piracy force. Kate's ships used human submarine tactics adapted for space warfare, appearing from nowhere to attack criminal vessels that preyed on galactic commerce. In 6 months, her small fleet had captured or destroyed more pirate ships than the Council's enforcement fleets had managed in the previous 5 years. The pirates aren't used to fighting. People who hunt them back, Kate explained to Admiral Hayes during a secure communication. Most galactic species treat piracy as a minor nuisance to be avoided rather than a problem to be solved. They file complaints with the Council and wait for someone else to handle it. Human aggression, which had initially terrified the galactic community, was proving to be exactly what the galaxy needed to deal with problems that had festered for centuries. Trade routes that had been dangerous for decades became safe again as word spread that human patrol ships were hunting in those areas. Council Speaker Vorthak faced the most difficult period of his 800-year tenure as the galaxy's senior diplomat. The arrival of humanity had triggered changes throughout galactic civilization that were impossible to control or predict. Species that had been content with Council oversight for centuries were suddenly demanding independence and self-governance. The humans have introduced a concept that we had successfully eliminated, Vorthak explained to an emergency session of senior ambassadors. The idea that species have the right to determine their own fate, regardless of their technological level or political maturity. Even worse, from the Council's perspective, was that humanity's military success had inspired other species to develop their own armed forces. For 3,000 years, the galaxy had been peaceful partly because most species had given up serious military development in favor of Council protection. Now, worlds throughout the galaxy were building warships and training soldiers. Ambassador Helen Parker sat in the Council chambers for humanity's first official membership ceremony, watching as Earth became the 13th member of galactic civilization. The ceremony was beautiful, with representatives from 12 species offering formal welcome to humanity as equals in the galactic community. But Helen understood that the real significance of the moment went far beyond symbolism. humanity's membership, represented the first time in galactic history that a species had joined the Council through military victory rather than gradual development and Council approval. Today marks a new era in galactic civilization, Vorthak announced to the assembled diplomats. We welcome the human species not as students seeking guidance, but as partners in the ongoing development of galactic society. Dr. Amy Parker watched the ceremony from Earth, knowing that her sister was witnessing the end of one era and the beginning of another. The old galaxy, where the Council made decisions for everyone and enforcement fleets relocated troublesome species, was finished. The new galaxy would be more dangerous, more chaotic, but also more free. Captain Lisa Chun stood at attention as the human flag was raised, alongside the banners of 12 other species in the Council chambers. 6 months ago, she had been a science officer on an exploration ship, searching empty space for signs of alien life. Now she was a military attached to humanity's galactic embassy, protecting diplomats who negotiated treaties affecting billions of lives across dozens of worlds. As the ceremony concluded and representatives from various species approached to formally greet Earth's diplomatic mission, Lisa reflected on how much had changed. Humanity had entered the galactic stage late, unwelcome, and armed with nothing but determination and the willingness to fight for their freedom. Now they were partners in a galactic community that was discovering what it meant to be truly free among the stars.